definition in the Ta'rifat of Imam al-Jurjani. And so he describes it as following. He says, Al-futuwa fil lugha as-sakha wal-karam. That if we want to talk about it linguistically, that chivalry is that munificence and generosity. وفي اصطلاح أهل الحقيقة, and when it's used as a technical term for the people of spiritual realities, it's defined as أن تؤثر الخلق على نفسك بالدنيا والآخرة. Is that you prefer creation over yourself, right? In relation to dunya and in relation to akhirah. So for things of this world and for things of the next world. And so what his definition is here is that it's essentially about ithar, preferring others over yourself. And you cannot be a chivalrous person if you can't learn to prefer others over your own self. If you are that afflicted with ananiya and you are too individualistic, you will not simply be able to do this. And to reach that state where that you actually want people to go forward before you, that not only in a worldly sense, but in an otherworldly sense, which is even harder to overcome. Because is that the disease of hasad, of envy, is very real. Envy is very, very, very real. And that it is the da' of the it is the disease of the previous communities that came before us. Is that having envy, this is a human problem. That how many people have been oppressed or killed or injustice was shown to them because of this perpetual state of envy that has existed in all different times from the beginning in the first human being until this time. That you cannot overcome envy if you don't have a deep sense of chivalry. Because the ultimate way to overcome envy is to desire others to attain what you yourself don't even attain. You're not going to fully overcome envy until you have ithar and you have tahaqquk with ithar. You actualize preferring others over yourself. If you can do that, it will completely uproot envy from your heart. And then that the foundation will be is that you just have farah. You have a deep happiness and joy for any blessing that comes to anyone. The world itself is so ridiculous for anyone to ever have envy for anyone else over a worldly thing. Right? It's utterly absurd to actually envy over worldly things, which much of the envy is over who someone gets to marry, who someone doesn't get to marry, someone having children, someone having physical beauty, someone having wealth, someone having a nice home, someone having a nice car, someone having a nice job, all of these other ridiculous things, that all of it is perishing. All of it, that if you look at these same people 10 years later, what happens? Right? They do these studies now, and they've actually found is that the vast majority of people that were quote-unquote popular in high school is that if they trace them 10 to 15 years later, and the scales have completely turned. And most of them actually were not successful at all. And they had very simple jobs. Not that having a simple job is a sign of the lack of success, but these same people who appeared to be the ones that everyone wanted to kick it with or hang around or to be with in high school, 10 to 15 years later the scales had turned. And the people that actually worked hard and got good grades, they often were the ones who were much more successful than these other people. Anyhow, the point here is that teaching yourself to desire good for other people. Now there's a practical way to be able to attain this trait. All of us have desires. All of us have things that we want to attain. And one of the great ways to inculcate this virtue in yourself is 5 minutes before bed, is that you sit facing the qibla with your head lowered. And you imagine what are the things that you long and yearn to attain in the dunya, and then in relation to the deen, in relation to your religion. And you imagine the people that are closest to you, that they attain those things and that you don't. And then you check your heart. If your heart, if there's like what's called istithqal, if it's heavy, right, it means that you have traces of envy in your heart. Right? If your heart is joyous and that you might want it but you don't have anything against someone else also, achieving that, that means your heart is healthy. And so then that if you find that heaviness or just downright envy where it's like fire inside, where it's like bothering you, then what you do is you start making dua for that person. That, oh Allah, bless this person to attain that. Bless this person to attain more than that. Bless this person to, and you start making dua upon dua upon dua. Because generally speaking, we have envy for people that are around the same level of us. We don't usually have envy unless we're just a really lowly soul, for people that are distant from us in one way or the other. Right? We don't tend to have envy for people that are way ahead of us, or for people that are, in some worldly sense, or people that are way behind us in some worldly sense. But there are people, and this is actually the worst type of person, which in some ways is the opposite of a great soul, which relates to chivalry. And the idea of a great soul has been discussed from the times of Plato and Aristotle in Aristotelian ethics. But there are people that don't even want a particular blessing, but just get upset and uncomfortable if anyone gets a blessing. They don't want anyone to be happy. And unfortunately, there are miserable people that are like this. And that sometimes when you walk into a room, you can feel the energy of these people. Like, there's a lot going on inside there. And you're just like, whoa, you don't know. And we're supposed to have a good opinion, but you protect yourself while having a good opinion. Because there are people that are like that don't want anyone else to be. They're miserable, and they want everyone else to be miserable. And even if they don't want something, they're just upset that someone else is actually happy in life. So this is the essential definition of Imam al-Jurjani, right? Chivalry is about preferring people over yourself in the dunya and the akhirah, right? In the dunya, that has a number of different manifestations. That sacrificing your time for other people. That one of the greatest gifts that you can do for other people is to sacrifice your time. Your time is your most precious thing of all. Sacrificing your time to take care of other people. That sacrificing your wealth to take care of other people. That sacrificing that anything that Allah has given you, whatever that thing might be, for the sake of other people. But also in terms of the akhirah, right? Reaching a degree of purity where you want the highest ranks of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you actually want everyone else to be even closer to you. And the way that your mind might struggle with how could that be is because in the end, if this whole affair is about tahqiq al-ubudiyya, that actualizing our servitude, the fact that there are other perfect slaves of Allah that are worshipping more perfectly, and no human being will ever reach true perfection, human perfection, is that this is in line with what your Lord wants. So your happiness is in what makes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala content. And so them being in a higher state than you will actually make you more content, because it's more pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this whole affair is ultimately about worshipping Him. If you can reach that degree of purity, you won't have envy, you won't have arrogance, you won't have riyā, you won't have ostentation, you won't have a long, long list. If you can reach that will uproot a lot of these diseases from its root. And that those remaining things you kind of work with a little bit of tawajjuh, of directing your heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those will be uprooted as well. If you can acquire this virtue and do what I had mentioned every single day. Imagine yourself where you're making dua for the people that are close to you, what you don't want to attain, what you want to attain. And if you do that time and time again, it will become easier. The next night it will become easier. The next night it will become easier to reach the point, again, to reiterate, where any blessing that anyone receives is that your first response, far from being envious, is you're happy. And then when you're happy, if you insert into your heart at that point contentment for the sake of Allah, because you see that being a blessing that Allah gave to that person, then you will share a portion in that blessing, which is so amazing. If you can have rida, contentment in your heart for any blessing that Allah Ta'ala has given to anyone, all of the prophets, all of those from their families, all of their companions, all of the members of their ummah, in any given time, you content and you go to bed at night, Ya Rab, I'm content with all of the blessings that you've ever given to anyone and you're deeply content about that, Allah Ta'ala will give you a blessing and a portion of that ni'mah for all of those people. From that simple, and this is why they say is that the actions of the heart are more potent than the actions of the limbs. Because with that one trait of heart, that you can fill your scrolls completely up with the good of this world and the next.